Can you speak British Columbian? Chinook jargon was spoken widely across British Columbia by thousands of indigenous and non-indigenous people just over 100 years ago. But by 2014, there was only one speaker left, Jay Powell, and he asked his students to organize a revitalization effort. He had learned Chinook from elders, and he wanted to maintain an unbroken chain of learning into the future. The northwest coast of North America was one of the last in the world to be mapped. Captain James Cook and his midshipman, George Vancouver, sojourned at Nootka Sound. Lists of Nuu-Chah-Nulth words became part of Nuu-Chah jargon that spread along the coast through the maritime fur trade. Fort George was established with the support of Chinook chief Concomly at the mouth of the Columbia River to trade products with the interior. French-speaking traders married daughters of chiefs, and they spoke a broken Chinook. Britain granted governmental powers to the Hudson's Bay Company, though First Nation Indian bands remained sovereign. Fort Vancouver became the capital of Columbia, this proto-British Columbia, where many had no common language. It was at Vancouver that broken Chinook, Nuu-Chah jargon, and many other languages combined to form Chinook jargon as we know it. The first record of Chinook jargon was among the mixed-race families of Vancouver. Their school teacher made the earliest known word list. Sunday school was conducted in Chinook. The governor, his officers, and workers used it among the 35 ethnic groups in multicultural Vancouver. French-Canadian priests reached Vancouver and compiled the first dictionary. They noted that the farming families around Vancouver spoke Chinook jargon and that it was spread widely through the Hudson's Bay Company trade networks. Indigenous eyewitnesses confirmed the language arose from the company milieu, often calling it the Hudson's Bay language. In 1846, Britain ceded the territory of Columbia, including Vancouver, to the U.S. up to the 49th parallel. Governor James Douglas led a caravan to his new capital, Victoria. Modest Demers, the priest who wrote the first jargon dictionary, became the first bishop of Vancouver Island. The U.S. waged a dozen wars with the native peoples of Old Columbia and signed treaties using Chinook jargon. Many went north and established a new Vancouver and a new Columbia, British Columbia. Others were absorbed into U.S. society or joined their relatives on reservations. While Chinook jargon declined in the U.S., it spread in British Columbia. The Hastings Mill, the largest employer in New Vancouver, operated in Chinook, and many Vancouverites spoke it at home. It was used extensively in the gold rushes. The Kamloops Wawa newspaper was written in Chinook Pepa, adapted from the French shorthand. Chinese newcomers learned jargon before they learned English. Chichakos, or newcomers, arrived and lobbied to abolish the Hudson's Bay Company government and oust jargon-speaking Governor James Douglas. English began replacing Chinook jargon. It was taught only briefly in the Kamloops residential school, but it survived in logging camps, canneries, native communities, and with wandering singers. Premier Richard McBride spoke it, and in a public meeting, the leader of the opposition conversed with Simon Fraser Tolmie in Chinook, convincing him to run for premier. In hybrid languages, the dominant language, usually European, contributes the vocabulary and pronunciation. But Chinook jargon core vocabulary is from traditional Chinook, and even European words are properly pronounced with a Chinook accent, meaning that the native culture was dominant. Some native language sounds and grammatical elements are also retained. Chinook jargon survives in hundreds of place names of Old Columbia, in the vocabulary of older residents, and in new efforts to revive it. Chinook jargon has been a vital part of our history, a joint project of Indigenous and non-Indigenous people, an inspiration for our future. Will Jay Powell's vision of an unbroken chain be realized? Can you speak British Columbian?